made it. I got a text yesterday from my childhood friend who had seen the promo, and he sent me a text message, a simple Shalom. So I knew that I had finally made it. Brink, thanks for the candle. It's pretty subtle, which is good because normally I'm not a candle guy because I get like irritated, but thanks guys. Let me throw this over here. All right, so first ones are from Monkey McPott. First question out the gate is, tell us about the cholos you encountered trying to film Day One's last trick for Skatemore. Day One's last trick is right in the LA riverbed in Atwater Village. And to get to it, I lived in Atwater and my house was right near a dead end that ended onto the riverbed, and so you could have access to the spot like that. And almost every time we went over there to skate it, there were always cholos kicking it, smoking weed and drinking beers. And because we were skaters, they would always like hit us up like as we were walking by. They're like, "Hey, where's the bud at, fool?" And then we'd kind of just be like, "Oh, we don't smoke. Day One doesn't smoke. I don't smoke." And then they'd be like, "Bullshit, fool! Like Chale!" Like, and we'd be like, "Dude, we don't smoke." And it was this weird thing because at this point we're like in our mid-20s, and it reminded me of like growing up in Whittier and being like 14 or something. But they were always cool. They didn't like really heckle us. They just wanted some weed from us or something. But that would happen pretty much every time. And then sometimes when we were filming at that spot that Day One's last tricks at, there would be like some sketchy dudes that would come up and down the bike path, but they weren't like cholos. They were just more like tweakers. Like you could tell that they were like tweaking. They were always on like a different bike that they'd stolen or something. It was just kind of like a weird thoroughfare for tweakers. But yeah, we would get hit up every time we'd go to that spot. Tell us about the time you made Berra mad at a demo. This one was kind of on me. It was like we were in Africa on a DVS trip, and I was young still, and I still wanted to skate as much as I could. And so I was skating at the demos with like Keenan and Huff and Berra kind of before they would officially start. But at this one park in particular, I liked the hip on the pyramid a lot. So I kept skating it, and I was kind of reluctant to pick up my camera and like start like filming. And I think I just kind of pushed it a little long for Berra's liking. And so he got pissed at me. He was like, "Dude, like we're skating, like, you know, can you get your camera out, start filming us?" And I don't know. I was kind of like, dude, I wanted to get a varial flip over the hip is what I wanted to do. So I was waiting till I got that varial flip. And I did get it, and then I kind of was greedy and was like still going, and that's when he kind of stepped up and said something or whatever. He got pissed, and I understand now in retrospect. At the time, I was like, "Oh, dude, like you're not even doing tricks that I'm gonna like film yet and put in the edit." That was my stance, right? Like they were still warming up, so the tricks in my head, even if I filmed them, they were gonna be on the cutting room floor. But now I get it, because he was just like, dude, like, you know, they were there to skate. That was their job, and I was there to document. And I probably should have been documenting, but it was all good. We sorted it out. Keenan and Huff and Lance Dawes were there, and like we de-escalated it pretty quickly. I don't know. We were young, dude. That's all I can say is we were young. Tell us about the karaoke nights during a Maddox trip. There was a Maddox trip to the Pacific Northwest in 2006 called the Grateful Shred Tour, and it was pretty much the entire team. MJ, Jerron, McCrank, Beeble, Day One, Degar, Van. Am I leaving anybody out? That might be it, but it was like the whole team. Oh, Mikey Taylor. It was the whole team, and it was this rad motorhome trip where we were taking the DVS RV. No, scratch that. We were taking the Maddox van. Maddox had this kind of souped up, like Econoline van that they, you know, had wrapped with their logos and stuff. And we were doing a Pacific Northwest trip. And when we got to Portland, we went out to, Danny and I went to the Doug Fir Lounge to catch, who was playing? We caught the end of like somebody's set. I can't remember who it was, the band. And then we were inspired to go sing karaoke across the street at this other bar because we had all recently, like somehow in the van, it came up that we'd all independently been singing karaoke recently, or as of late, we'd kind of discovered the enjoyment of it. And so now we were at this show so we got inspired like the same way, I guess, like watching a skate video. We're like, dude, let's go sing. So we found a karaoke bar, or like a bar that did karaoke across the street. And it was like Danny, myself, Tony E, Mark was there. Trying to think, John was probably there. And we went across the street, and then we just did karaoke for the night and kind of caught the bug, so that the next day when we were in Seattle, we had like a pretty epic karaoke session. It was Mark, myself, Van, and Danny. And we asked the concierge at the hotel, like, hey, where's the best place to do karaoke in Seattle? And she had recommended this Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. And so we're like, that sounds perfect. So we went there, and it was just, it was like, I think it was like a weeknight, so it wasn't crazy packed, but there was like definitely a group of locals that you could tell would come there and have drinks and sing karaoke. And we were not the locals. And as the night progressed, we had more drinks, we got more brave, and I feel like the crescendo was MJ did a rendition of U2's With or Without You, with like, it was super emotional. There was like this tiny stage, and instead of like standing and singing, he like took a knee and kind of sat down and like went for it, and everybody was dying. Like our group was dying. Like we were like, this is amazing. And I think the locals just did not know what to make of it, because they were pretty standard fare. Like the locals would go up and they knew their songs. Like they'd be like, oh, okay, Billy. And then they would sing their song kind of just standing there. And Mark turned it into like a full performance, and it kind of brought the house down. Plus that song had, it's this kind of like super slow anthemic build. So like he really laid into it. He did a couple other ones too, but that was like the last one that I remember that was like close to the end of the night. And on the way out, Van Wastel, who was with us but didn't sing the whole time, but he was like a rad like supporter of the cause. On the way out, I'll never forget, there was a big fish tank near the entrance that had, like lobsters and oysters and mussels and like that you could order off the menu or whatever. And he reached his hand in. I didn't see this, but this is what I'm imagining. He reached his hand and he grabbed a mussel, and because when we were out front waiting for a cab to go home, he had his mouth all full, and he popped it out, and it was this disgusting. I mean, it was a live mussel. It was closed still, but it was disgusting, and it was huge. And immediately we're like, oh, dude, you can't like put that in your mouth. Like you're gonna get like not salmonella, but like the equivalent, whatever a shellfish can give you. Maybe it's salmonella. And he was just like, dude, it's totally fine. And he would like pop it in and out like it was like a jawbreaker. Like he'd like put it in and kind of like suck on it. And he was all like briny and salty, he said. And then he'd like pop it out. I think he took it back to the hotel with us. But that was a pretty epic night. You ruined Rodney Mullen's session. Kind of. One time, probably in like 98, there's a school off Fairfax. But it had these like little rails out front that people skated for a while. And then, it was just an elementary school. So it had the small picnic tables in the schoolyard. And I was meeting, I think it was either Danny Montoya or Jerry Fowler in the front to skate the rails. And I'd parked my car on the side of the street, and I looked through the fence, and Rodney's skating a table with Socrates. And I'd met these guys a couple times before. And so I felt like comfortable just like hollering through the fence, like Sock, like Rodney, what's up? Plus I knew I wasn't going in there to skate the table with them. Like I was going to the front. So it was just kind of like a really quick, like, hey, later. But they, I think, assumed I'd recognize them and was going to come join the session. And I don't know if they couldn't recognize me from that far away. But like, Rodney has a distinct style, and I know who's filming Rodney. So I knew who they were, but I don't think they knew who I was. And so they kind of like looked over at me, and I think like Rodney did like a little what's up. And then you just see Sock like go and grab his backpack, like put the camera in it. Rodney like picks up his board, and they leave. And I'm like, oh shit. Like I wanted to be like, no, like I'm not coming in. Like don't, like, cause Rodney likes to skate by himself for the most part. And so I went around to the front of the school, and I made sure not to go like check again. I don't know if they continued skating or not, but by the time we left, they weren't there. And so I assume they just like packed it in because I said hi, and I felt kind of like an asshole. I was like, oh shit. I think I saw them like a few weeks later, like at Dwindle or World at the time. And I was like, saw you guys at that school off. Fuck man, I want to say it's La Brea, maybe. But And then they were just like, oh, like I don't even think it registered to them what the incident was I was talking about. It says, how was it going to the Secondhand Smoke premiere? Going to the Secondhand Smoke premiere was amazing. That video as a whole was pretty incredible, and then having Jeremy Ray as kind of like the local pro hero of where I was living during my high school years, and then being at the premiere where unbeknownst to me, he would have this kind of like groundbreaking, incredible skate park. There was like this, not only was it amazing to be there, but then to kind of be like, oh, like that's the dude like we skate with sometimes, or like I buy old boards off of. There was like this sense of like local pride, I guess. Like you see anybody kind of making it. Not that he had just made it, but he kind of like blew the doors off of whatever was going on. It felt like, and that we were like holy shit. And he, if I'm not mistaken, like he and his brother Jonas like got us in because we had no connections like in the industry yet, aside from like knowing those guys. And I think like James, Craig, and some of the other guys who lived around us knew like Ronnie Krieger and some of the World Camp. But those guys at that point is like 95. None of those guys are on like world brands, like, James or Gideon or anything. That premiere was sick. Ronnie Bertino's part, I remember we were pretty blown away by. Like his style was so fucking good. His song was sick. His trick selection. And I think his short but sweet, like it was like the right length. You were just like, holy shit, like wanted more. Yeah, Jeremy and Jonas and Paul Luna, their good friend, were sitting right in front of us in the theater. So we were behind them the whole time for the film. And I remember right before Jeremy's part starts, Paul Luna turns around and he goes, watch this. And we're like, we knew it was Jeremy's part coming, but what he was referring to was the opening line at Carlsbad. Because like, it started and Jeremy Ray does like the 360 flip down the stairs. And that's when Paul turned and he was like, watch this. And so we're like, all right. And then when it ended with the frontside flip down Carlsbad, like, dude, that was unfathomable at the time. Like the trick alone down the gap was mind-blowing, but then to do it in a line like that where you're starting at the stairs where most people would have been happy to have the 360 flip as a single trick in their part still at that time. So we were just like, and then the song kicks in and it was just like it was very, it was a very like magical moment as a skateboard fan because we weren't in the industry yet. We were young kids, like just still watching skate videos with the perspective of just being a skateboarder. I wasn't paying attention to like filming or any of that shit. Editing, yes, because like the song hits like right when he lands. Like that kind of stuff was like subconsciously hitting you. But yeah, but I wasn't like taking note or anything. Tell us a Heath story. All right. In May of 2002, Heath and Berra had decided to do this road trip across the U.S. to find and skate a few like handrails that they knew about and had heard about. And this is like pre-Google Maps and stuff like that. So they were hearing from like, kids, like they'd be at a demo or something like, dude, you got to come to Denver. They're like, you'd love these rails, And so they were filming for their part in Mosaic. And I had just started at DVS. And so Steve was like, dude, can you come on this road trip with us and film us? And we'll, in a perfect world, we'd get tricks for Mosaic and we'd also get some stuff to start holding for an as yet to be decided DVS video. At that point, we hadn't really we knew we were going to do one, but it hadn't really started. And so I went with them on this road trip and we drove cross country in like a Ford Explorer towing like a small U-Haul container that we brought like some flat bars and like plywood and things to like, that way, you're halfway across the country. You're not trying to find a Home Depot at like 10 p.m. It's like, if you want to skate this rail, you have everything in there. You have generator, lights. Yeah, exactly. Stuff to warm up on. Exactly. So, because a lot of these rails, like, especially in the Midwest, would be just these spots where like, it's just the rail. It's not like, it's a schoolyard where you can warm up on the ledges over here. It's just a rail in a parking lot or something. The Heath story comes in is when we were in Indiana and it's like the middle of the night, or we were driving to Indiana from like Missouri or something. And Steve was driving and somehow he, and the rest of us, none of us noticed that the car was running out of gas. And so we're in the middle of the night, and it's one of those stretches of highway in the Midwest where it's like, you'll see a sign for like the next like off ramps or whatever. It'll be like 6 miles. and then you won't see another thing for like 5 miles. It's super infrequent. And right in the middle of an actual, we don't know how far we were from anything, the car runs out of gas, and like the lights turn off and it stops. And it's like, dude, it's got to be like 2 a.m. and we're exhausted and we're trying to get to like a hotel, like to check in and sleep. And we were staying in like budget motels, like Motel 6s and stuff. This wasn't like some, I don't know, it wasn't any, I don't know who was funding the trip or help funding it. I think it was like Heath and Berra personally. So they weren't trying to, spend a ton of money. And the car breaks down. We have again, this is 2002. So there's no like Google Maps. Like you can't pull up your phone and see where you are in relation to an exit or anything. And we don't have, I don't think we purchased like, in Indiana, like a folding highway map where we could see stuff. We were just kind of, like, yeah, we'll make it to the, we knew where we were going. We never thought we'd run into a problem. And so Heath and I are like delirious. We're exhausted and we're like, holy shit, like I can't believe this is going to happen. Because I remember distinctly, the car didn't run out of gas and then we're like, what the fuck? We saw the needle like with the light on and we were like, oh my God, we're going to run out. So we kind of knew it was going to happen, but we were hoping that we could get close to an off ramp where we could like skate and fill up a gas tank or something. It happened in the middle of pitch black, like middle of nowhere. And so Heath and I get out and we're like, dude, we're going to push it. And so we decide that the two of us are going to push this Ford Explorer with a U-Haul thing to the next off ramp. Cause we're like super, we're like trying to stay positive. We're like, it can't be like more than a mile. Like we're trying to like look up, like we're like, no, dude, because it was like foggy. It's like the middle of the night, so we couldn't see that far. We're like, no, it'll be fine. So at the cell phone reception, there are cell phones at the time, but the cell phone reception was like none. And so we get out, and there's like footage of me, I think, filming just like giddy with laughter, like Heath and I like pushing like the thing and like yelling at Berra, like we could do it, like come on, come out. And we were like trying to get him to like come out and help us and like not steer the car. And then we did that probably for like 20 minutes. And then we were like, dude, this is a waste. And so we finally called like AAA or whatever. We got a hold of somebody. And when the tow truck came, it was like a scene out of like a bad horror film where, where the guy's like, wow, you guys got yourself in a situation here or something. And we're like, yeah, like we were going to push it the whole way. And he was like, push it? He's like, nearest exit's like 6 miles or something. We were like, no, like it was one of those things where like, we were never going to make it. Like, thank God this guy came. That was a pretty memorable Heath moment because it was so ridiculous. And we were like, we turned into like 12-year-old kids. So we're like, we could do this. Like not only a car, but a car towing a trailer. It was so stupid. And we're dead sober too. It's not like we were like drunk. So we're like, oh, it's like we could do this. We gave it our all for like 20 minutes. But that's kind of like who I find out later. That's like who Heath is. He's like, yeah, row from California to Mexico by myself in a boat. Yeah, let's do this. So I feel like maybe I held Heath back. He probably would have kept going, but I'm the one who was like, dude, let's call it a night. Distant rumors. Favorite new wave band from the 80s, and are there any current bands you think are worth checking out? Favorite new wave band from the 80s is not like some deep cut or anything. It's OMD, their early stuff, like their first 3 albums. Like before, like Breakfast Clubs or fucking Pretty in Pink soundtrack and stuff. It's before that. Like the first 3 albums are super good and like weird and artistic and kind of super minimal. And then after that, they had some success and started adding more. I think like every band, they add more shit to the pot. And I just like the first 3 albums a lot. Any new bands or current bands worth checking out? Music is so subjective. Like I hate to ever say like a recommendation to, fuck, I don't even know if I recommend stuff to my friends anymore because we've all got like our own tastes. And let's say Doc and Marty have a spare seat in their DeLorean and invite you on a trip. You're their new friend and you can choose where they'll go, when would you go, where would you go, and why. Is it a where or a when? Because I think the thing with Back to the Future is they don't travel any new place. They're in the same place. So I think that's the premise of that film is like you can only choose the the date and time, but you can't choose a new location. So I'll say when I would go. I would go back to my late 20s because everything was working well. My body was good. Life seemed, I don't know, life seemed like it still was ahead of me. And I wasn't a teenager or a young adult anymore. Like I was I don't know. That's when I would go in my own life, because I feel like if I had to go before my life, I would go to.
Like to change anything?
I don't. Nah, not really. I don't know. Yeah, just to be like feel like that again. I actually felt like good on my skateboard. I felt, like I don't know. It was like I had good times with my friends. There was a level of responsibility that I had in my late 20s, but it wasn't. It didn't feel like It just didn't. It didn't feel like too much or anything. I don't know. It was just a fun time, I guess. But if I was going to travel like back in time, like to an era, let's see. Maybe like the earlier 80s. Because, I was born in 79. So my 80s, for the most part, I have older siblings, which kind of made me grow up faster. But my experience of the 80s, when you're kind of conscious of it and kind of take it in, is like, it's like 86, 87, and anything before that is like I don't really have much memory. But as I got older, I was like, oh shit, the shit that happened in the early 80s is actually the stuff that I like more. Even just films, music, like style. By the time that I was kind of aware, the mid 80s are kind of schlocky. It had kind of like turned a corner to like real like neon and just got kind of kitschy. And I don't have any desire to go back to like kitschy shit. Same with like the 50s. Like the 50s are cool, but like if I'm going back to the 50s, I don't want to go back to like poodle skirts and like amoeba tables and stuff like that. It's not my interest. Any documentaries you'd recommend? It's funny, I watch a lot of documentaries, but it's kind of like like skate content, almost like or skate videos. I can't believe I said content. I fucking hate that word. Let's have a sidebar about skate content. Nobody ever picked up a skateboard to make content. No dude ever picked up a camera to be like, we should make some content today. Fucking hate that word. If we can eliminate that word from the vocabulary of skateboarding, it'd be amazing. Because it feels weird. Like, it feels almost like, you make skate videos or skate parts or skate project or skate footage. Any of those things are fine. But skate content feels like some fucking boardroom dude, like, is like, it's turning into like a commodity, like, oh, skate content's up, guys, 3.8%. Like, fucking hate that word. I was gonna say, I watch a lot of documentaries, and unfortunately, because I watch a lot of them, not a ton of them, they melt together almost like skate parts. Like, some stand out. One that I watched like last year, or like a couple of years ago, I guess, is The Staircase, which originally came out like in the early 2000s. It's like a true crime documentary. It's like 6 parts or something. And originally it was like 4 parts long because it was happening in real time. So somebody was documenting like someone's trial, and then there was kind of like not like a non-resolution to the trial, and then it picked up again a few years ago. So now there's like part 6, 7, and 8. And my wife and I watched that, and that was fascinating. The Staircase. All right. Next questions are from Tuna. Aside from bread, what is the most crucial topping on a sandwich? For me, it's meat, because I'm not a vegetarian. So for me, once you have the bread, as long as there's some sort of meat on there, if you had to call it a day at that point, that's a sandwich. So the one thing, if the question was what could you omit from every sandwich you've ever eaten, the answer would be mayo. I'm not a mayo person. I feel like mayo, I'm not mad at people who like it on their sandwich, but it is not crucial. You got to have meat. And then everything else from there is kind of like a bonus. I do like a lot of vegetables on my sandwich, but I know a good portion of the world, a sandwich is pretty much like meat and cheese. Apart from Day One, who was the most exciting to work with during the making of Skatemore. Yeah, you know what? I didn't film anything with Dennis. I didn't get to film a single trick of Dennis for Skatemore. There's some trivia. He got on like at the last second, and all of his footage was all filmed in SF by Dan Vellucci, and then I think on a Vulcan trip by Dan Vellucci. I think he filmed like everything. Yeah, no, I mean probably Dill. He just he has like very distinct ideas of like what he wants to do and where he wants to do it and how he wants to do it. And so, it's nice to film with people like that when they're like super driven and they're like, don't want to do that. I mean, yeah, whatever. Like he had very distinct ideas, and so that made it fun. These are good questions. Did you take these are still from Tuna. Do you take alternate driving routes to find new skate spots? And how far out of your way are you willing to drive on these alternate routes? The answer to that is yes, and very far. I've like spent like hours like going the long way, like, I'll be in like Pomona and I need to get back to Silver Lake, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take like Mountain, or like Route 66 basically. I'm going to take these street or Foothill for as long as I can, just because 1, I get bored on the freeways, and 2, I get bored of the same spots. So I'm always like trying to find new things. especially in parts of Southern California that are like underrepresented in skate videos. All right, next question's from Ciota. What's your favorite graphic? Probably, I don't know that it's my favorite, but I think the ones that when you first start skating are the ones that really stick with you. And this isn't when I first started, but this one I felt like as a kid, I was the prime demographic for this, and it was the World Industries Stickorama. It's like 1990, maybe 91, and it was like the graphic was like a city scene, you know, with like pedestrians and like storefronts and stuff like that, or like a neighborhood, and then it came with like a sticker pack, and in that sticker pack there was like a police officer, like a little like dog crap, all this stuff that you could kind of fill out the scene with. And you know, I'm like 11 or 12 or something at the time, and that I'm like, this is so sick. It was like thoughtful. I had other boards that I really liked. I had like a Todd Conjulier Liberty board, which I really liked. And then I'm trying to think, it was all this like early World Industry stuff. Before that, I really liked like old Powell graphics as like a really young kid, like the Caballero Dragon or whatever. But like when I kind of was a little bit more, I don't know, had a little more discerning tastes, I feel like that Stickorama, I just thought it was sick that it was like interactive. Like here's the graphic, but then you can kind of make it your own. It's been done a million times since then, or similar kind of things. Like people have done variations, but that was the OG one. Favorite place to film? Europe as a whole. I don't know. Europe's really good. Next question is from Whale. Favorite first try clip you filmed? There hasn't been anything that I can think of that was first try that was like, you know, like a mind-blowing trick. But one of the tricks that was like fourth try, it's like seriously third or fourth try, that you can hear in the raw footage. I'm so giddy, and like Chris Ortiz, who was shooting photos, like we like sound raw, like so giddy. Jeremy Ray backside heel flipped the Santa Monica triple set. This is 1998. He back heels it like third or fourth try, and you can hear the excitement and our like the disbelief, like holy shit! And we're like freaking out, and that trick in that many tries, we were just like, you're the best. Like that was crazy. So yeah, the first try, I can't recall anything that was like, you know, like a gnarly trick. They were like cool tricks. I'm like, what, first try? Like, but that one sticks out. That was like third or fourth. Next question is from Know Your Role. This one's rad. Breakfast Club, Heather's Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or Ferris Bueller's Day Off? It's got to be Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Followed in second by Breakfast Club. Heather's would be last on that list. Fast Times was cool. I liked Fast Times, but Fast Times felt like more of like for my age. I don't know. I liked Ferris Bueller's. It's like silly. It's like it's just a rad. Fast Times was kind of gnarly the first time I saw it. I was like, oh, it was like date rape and stuff. Like that was like a way different tone than I was used to as like a young kid in the 80s. I was like, this is weird, but I like it. Next question is from Soda Jerk. Being a Kennedy means you must be rich, powerful, and prone to assassination. But what's being a Colin like? Do you ever drink too much coffee and find yourself rushing for the shelter of the bathroom stall? Anybody who's ever drank coffee as an adult will know that they will have too much coffee and find themselves rushing for the shelter of a bathroom stall. So the answer to that one is yes. Being a Colin is okay. I don't know, there's like some good Collins out there. I'll tell you the one thing about being a Colin as a kid growing up in the 80s and the 90s though, when Colin Powell was in the news because he was part of the, you know, first President Bush's cabinet, it drove me bananas that this dude was pronouncing his name Colin. And my dad's Scottish from Scotland, and Colin is a Scottish name. So my dad has like an accent and stuff still. And my dad would be like, oh, that's not how you pronounce your name. Like, this guy sounds like a moron. Like, he would like talk shit on this dude. He's like, how could you not know your own name? So that was shitty as a kid because people would be like, Colin Kennedy, like, because Colin Powell. And I'd be like, fuck, dude, it's Colin. That's what being a Colin's like when Colin Powell's in the news. This is from Double Steve Burger. Double Steve Burger wants to know, hey, Colin, I have a quick science question. Would you rather pee out a marble or poop out a softball? Well, I had a kidney stone a few years ago, and that is a tiny little jagged rock, and I had to pee that out. So I would definitely choose poop out a softball, because peeing that fucking tiny stone out, if that's what it felt like for that stone, I would be dead. So I feel like I could maybe poop the softball out first. Okay, so this one's a trick question. This is from Something Must Break Now. And it says, why is the Sony VX1000 with the Mark I fisheye still the best combo for filming skateboarding? It doesn't say, is the Sony VX1000. It says, why is it the best? So he's making me jump on board with the fact that it's the best. I don't know if it's the best for all skateboarding, but it is a rad combo. Like it is pretty timeless. I'm not mad at the VX and the Mark I combo. I think it looks good, but I think there's other ways to shoot skating that I like that don't involve even a fisheye. So I think one thing I'll say this though, maybe to that question, why is it the best? I think also because it's pretty durable and it's pretty user friendly. You know, all these other cameras have come out in the last 10 years that kind of requires more knowledge from the get-go, and whereas you could get a VX and probably turn it on and within like 10 minutes have it set up pretty decently, whereas these other cameras, the terminology, the settings, like it's just much more elaborate. So I think when you're out skating and you don't have a ton of time, sometimes the VX is pretty sick. Boop, boop, turn it on, like exposure is good, focus is good, let's go. So that's probably, I don't know, that's probably what makes it really one of the things that makes it really popular aside from its look. All right, GZA Butler. Have you ever been mistaken for the other Colin Kennedy from Blueprint Nike? Yes, I have. And my best identity kind of swapping moment was one time when I was working at DVS. I wasn't at the office, but at home I received a check from Thunder Trucks, and I was like, it was like Deluxe or whatever. And I opened it up. I'm like, what am I getting from Deluxe? I opened it up, and it was like Colin's royalty check from Thunder for like $200. And I was like, I haven't done any work for Thunder. I haven't invoiced them for any footage or anything. And it like kind of dawned on me, and I was like, oh shit. But I mean, it says Colin Kennedy. I mean, I could have cashed it, but anybody who had half a brain at that time, not that I was afraid of Colin, but Mickey Reyes was enough of like a threat level where I was like, if I do this and it gets found out, I'm a schmuck, Plus I knew Colin already at the time, and I wasn't going to do that to Colin. So I called up Deluxe, I remember, and being like, hey, I got the other Colin Kennedy's like check. And I can't remember who was on the phone. They're all, dude should have cashed it. Like they were kind of like, you're a kook. Like, why are you returning this? So hopefully Colin got that check. It would suck if they just never sent it to Colin. They're like, oh, well, dude doesn't get paid. But that was the time. There have been other times too. When I would be like in London filming over the years, sometimes kids would trip out and they'd be like, wait, like you don't look like they couldn't quite wrap their heads around it. And then they thought vice versa, that Colin was somehow making videos in the States. And they were like, what? Because he would tell me the same thing. People come up to me asking me like video questions. I'm like, dude, mate, I don't make videos. I just skate. Well, it says, what is it like being the only creative person around numbers? Which isn't true. Was it your concept for the lifestyle session clips? Yeah, it was my concept for those clips, but there's like a whole other group of people behind the scenes that kind of, I wasn't there for the start of the brand. Like they'd already created things, and they came and showed me, they're like, hey, this is our brand, this is what we're going to do, and we want to do a video to launch the brand, and they wanted to make something that stood out. And I was like, all right, well, everybody has documented Guy and Eric over the years, like the best, like Sock, Tim Dowling, Ty, Spike, like these guys have all documented these guys in kind of the traditional skateboard format in their own way and done it really well. And I was like, all right, well, I want to try to showcase you guys slightly different. So I was like, basically pitched them. I was like, look, it's going to be like high-end dad cam. Like it'll look like a dude that's just kind of like there turning around with you guys. There's no zooming. There's none of that, just full dad style. And just to kind of be an observer. And luckily they were like, I think probably because they've made 1 million skate video parts. They're like, oh, cool. Like, like it takes maybe the pressure off of them of like, all right, let's film this line. Let's, and like try it 1,000 times. So it was just kind of, that was fun to work on it with those guys. And let's see, the response from the videos, I'd say, I mean, I worked on them, so I don't know how many people are going to be outright be like, I fucking hate your video or whatever. So maybe I received an abnormal amount of like people being in support of it, but I knew that there was people that hated it, and I pitched it to them like that too. That wasn't like a mystery. Like when we sat down, I was like, hey, I have this idea, and I said, and it's going to be pretty polarizing. People are either going to really like it and appreciate it, or they're going to fucking hate it. And they were like, cool, because they were trying to launch a new brand, and so it was like the worst thing you could do would be to make something that feels like something you've already seen, but be like, but we're new. That's like a weird way to launch something. Like, you know, like no success. I don't want to sound like a marketing dude, but no person who's ever like created in like World Industries when they first came out, they weren't just like, what's Powell Peralta in Santa Cruz doing? Oh, we should do that too. They were like, no, fuck that. We're gonna make, you know, we're gonna go this way and make something new. So that was me being like, oh yeah, you guys want to make something new? Let's do something new. And with that comes people going like, what the fuck is this? So, but I was fine with that. In fact, it was cool to hear people's, if they had like constructive kind of criticisms of like what they didn't like. I kind of enjoy reading that stuff or hearing it. These questions are for Body Double. It says, hey Colin, apologies in advance for the Skate-More centric questions. Just, you don't need to apologize, that's fine. It says, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the Melbourne DVS trip in 2004 was one of the best trips you've ever been on, and one that you look back on very fondly. What made that trip so special? I've been posting clips from that online, which probably makes it feel like it is one of the best trips that I had. And it is one of the best trips I had. And the thing that made it, there's a few things that made it special. One, Melbourne's a rad city. Australia is an amazing place, and Melbourne in particular is like a very unique city. The reason why it really stands out is I was there for like 32 days. And I've never been on a trip in one city for that long, right? So I've been on like long trips, but you pop into a city, you're there for 3 days, you move on, you go. But being in one city for 32 days, you really start getting a feel for that city, you know? And there was spots everywhere. The weather was good. Like it just kind of was, everyone was skating well. So it was a special trip in that regard. And so I do look back on it pretty fondly. We had rented an apartment. So this is before Airbnb too, which Airbnb would have been amazing. Like when I was younger to like go on skate trips, but we rented like a long stay apartment instead of a hotel. So I think that also made it special. So instead of like, you know, 10 rooms where everyone's kind of goes to their own world at the end of the day, it was much more communal. You know, we were like all staying in this kind of like extended stay, like a hotel apartment. And, you know, so we like a lot of us would eat breakfast together, and that just gives a skate trip a different vibe. Because when you're going on a tour, normally it's only like 2 of you to a room. And so you kind of have like, you know, bonding with your roommate, but the only other times that you're with everybody is in the van or at a spot. And this one felt more like, I don't know, it felt like roommates, like you had like roommates for a while. So that one was a good one. Any stories of running into the Flip guys on that trip? The only story I have is we skated with them at the washes. They call it like the wash, or the drains. I think they call it the Melbourne drains. And it's like, yeah, it's like there's like a river gap in the middle and like banks with like a Euro gap on the other side. And those guys were there that day. It was like Bulala and Bastian, Ewan Bowman. Who else was there? Dustin Dolan. And no, it was cool. I mean, that was kind of like, and even Spanky was there for some reason. It was like one of those kind of like mega sessions, you know. It's like, when's the last time you see like Dill, Day One, Bulala? You know, it was like one of those weird days where it was like, oh shit. Like, I was like kind of fanning out too, because the collection of people was pretty amazing for one spot. Is there anything about Skate-More you regret? I mean, yeah, every project I can look back and be like, pinpoint like the downfalls. I think the one part in Skate-More that I look back on that I was like, oh, why did I edit it like that? I was like so beholden to the song. Like I really let the song dictate the edit, was Carrie Getz's part. So sorry, Carrie. In hindsight, I wouldn't have so many like slow-mos kind of like cut to the song and stuff. That's the one part that stands out to me as like, if I look back, I'm like, why did I do that? But yeah, there's other things too, but I don't need to rehash that. I think any project, given enough time, you're able to look back and either see the things that still stand up and then the things that you're like, holy shit, like why did we do that? Who are some of your current favorite filmers? I like Jake Ledger. He's rad. I like trying to think. Ben Erickson, I think he's from Seattle. These guys aren't there. I don't know that they're not working for like the large teams. I think Jake works for New Balance. I don't know. That's like a hard one. I like a lot of the stuff that's coming out, and then some stuff I'm like not that into. I think probably like everybody else. But those are two names of guys that are like younger that feel like they have like kind of like their own voice, which I usually like. I like a lot of guys. That's a trick question. Friendly Dave asks, are you related to Terry? What is the weirdest place you've ever slept? one of the weirdest places I've ever slept is at the Pleasanton Skate Park. Pleasanton's like a suburb, pretty deep suburb of San Francisco. And back in the late 90s, there weren't that many skate parks yet in California. Pleasanton, this like suburb, had gotten one. And so we were making our way to San Francisco. And so we drove up the 5 and then across the 580 or some shit. I don't remember. But Pleasanton's off that freeway. And we heard that there was a park there. So we pulled off and we got there late at night. And we weren't old enough to rent a hotel room. We were like 17 or whatever. So we just slept behind, there was like these concrete quarter pipes with decks. And we slept behind the deck, like on the floor of the Pleasanton skate park. That's probably one of the weirdest places I've ever slept. I would never sleep in Pleasanton at a skate park again. It was uncomfortable and cold. We were there on like spring break or something, and spring break up in the Bay Area is much different than spring break in Southern California. It's a lot cooler up there. No tent. Come on, we're like 17. We had no plans. We were just like, we'll sleep at the skate park. Have you ever shit your pants? Friendly Dave asks. The answer is surprisingly yes. Yeah, I'd like to say that like there's that expression like mind over matter, right? Like if you just think about it, you could like overcome things. You can't do mind over biology though. So you can like try, and that's what happened in my case. It was like I used every like synapse firing in my brain to try to control myself, and I lost that battle eventually, and I'll never forget it. No, it wasn't during filming. I would definitely be like, hey dude, I gotta go take a shit. No, it was on a trip though, and it was in a foreign country, and we were far away from our hotel, and there was no restroom. And I was in the process of trying to make my way back, and I was like 2/3 of the way home, and it was the worst feeling ever in my life, dude. But anyway, yeah, I have, and it's something I think everybody should experience. So that nobody's feeling holier than thou about having not shit themselves. I feel like everybody deserves to shit themselves once in their life. Is there a clip that got away? Like the battery died, or you forgot to hit record, or something like that. There's one clip that I can think of off the top of my head that's not even like a make, but there's a slam that got away, like a good fucking slam. So Danny Garcia, there was these really tall ledges at this basketball court in Brea that were really popular in the late 90s. James Craig had like switch heel back tail on it. There's like blue tile, exactly. Blue tile, like, a little strip of it near the top. There's 2 parks that look identical to that. Danny has a line at one of them in Mosaic where he does like a nollie flip Manny at the end. It's not that park. This is a different park, and the ledges are straight. That one has like curved ledges. And anyway, it was a spot that we would skate at, and Danny had a lot of pop back then. And so when he would get something dialed, he would want to do it on those ledges because those were kind of universally known as like really tall ledges. They were like the equivalent of doing something kind of like on a table, but in Orange County. So if you did it at those ledges, you're like, damn, it's like taller than a table. So Danny had learned switch front blunts really good on stuff, and he was like, hey, I want to switch front blunt this, and that's fucking gnarly. He wanted to do it in a line, and I was like, yeah, all right, let's go get this line. So I can't remember what the line is. I want to say that we turned like a trash can on its side, and he maybe did like nollie 180 and then like switch flip on flat or something. But anyway, long story short is he does switch front blunt, and the ledge ends, and then there's this light post that's like pretty close, but it's slightly offset. So most tricks, it's never an issue, like tail slides and stuff, you don't ever come close. But because you're on top for a blunt, he gets on one and it shoots out, and the pole's right here. So he slides it, shoots out, and he basically like human horseshoes like around the pole, like bam! I mean, at like full speed, and he's like a big dude. And it's this incredible slam. And he's like, gets up and he's like, wow, like his ribs are hurting and stuff. And we watched it back, like to see what it had. Like, holy shit, it's one of those slams that was worth rewatching because he was done skating. Like, he couldn't skate anymore. And I never played it back, like past the slam. So the next day when I went filming, I presumed that I had, like, after watching it, had fast forwarded the tape back to start afterward. And so on that tape, it's like, you see him roll up, and then it cuts to like some bullshit, like first attempt at some other spot, like from the days after. And then it cuts back to him like, like on the ground or something. And the reason I was bummed because it was like such a once in a lifetime, like he human horseshoed this thing. It was amazing. And I was bummed. It was one of those slams where it's like, you kind of wish you still had it. Even he was like, oh my God, you recorded over it. But aside from tricks, I don't think I ever really missed a trick because of like battery or something like that. I'm sure I did like a demo or some like circumstance where it was kind of inconsequential, you know. But I don't think I ever missed like a gnarly like something for their video part. Kalami says, "Thanks for blessing us with the DGAR Fridays. Favorite DGAR moment? Too many funny moments with that dude. I had the pleasure of like traveling with him on a couple of Maddox trips over the years, and then filming with him obviously for a long time. You know what? I mean, it's kind of like a basic moment. It's not like anything that nobody hasn't. It's not something that people aren't familiar with. But when he nollie kickflip crooked grinded the Eldorado rail, this is like 1999 or something. When he did that, that filming that and being there for that nollie flip crook, that felt to me kind of like another major step in like what could be done on a handrail. The same way like when I saw guys switch front shove it, switch crook in Mouse a few years earlier, where it was like such a giant leap. Because people were starting to like nollie flip into stuff, but they would do like nollie flip nose slides and it'd be these like really small rails. It was all this that one was like a longer rail. It's super tiny. And it was just this kind of combination of like, oh shit, this is like a moment. And I remember feeling like, holy shit, we just caught something pretty special. So that was like an early kind of memory of when I knew Danny was kind of on the path, I guess, of being like, you know, really, really good. We were tripping out on that one. But there's a lot of other DGAR moments. I just can't recall them. Let's see, karaoke with Danny was fun. And I think there was like a birthday, maybe when he turned like 20, I don't know, 25 or something. He had a karaoke birthday at his mom's house. And that was fucking awesome because it was pretty shameless. So Danny, thanks for, it's no mystery why Danny's in music. If he could throw a karaoke party like that, it's a good one. You dig is the next. Yes, is it more lucrative to film contest than street filming? Lucrative, yeah, it probably is. If you could become a camera operator for like X Games and Street League and all that stuff, that's like a guaranteed paycheck. And for a few days worth of work, you can probably make what you would make for a month as like just filming street clips. I myself, I think you might be confusing me with somebody else. I didn't film a bunch of contest things. I think I filmed like one Maloof Money Cup back in the day in New York. And I filmed at like when Converse was doing like the bowl series before I think Vans was doing it down at Huntington Beach. So I have like limited contest, like as in terms of getting hired as like a camera operator by like a proper production company. I only did it a couple times and it was like good pay. So I can say that, yeah, you can make way more money doing that if you can do it consistently than filming in the street. But I mean, I would way rather be filming in the streets than a contest. Bagel skate, favorite DVS shoe? Probably the Militia. No, I'm just kidding. Those were like the big puffy like shoes that we all would shake our heads at. But those were probably what kept the lights on for a long time. Favorite DVS shoe? I actually liked the Dill 3, I think, or 2. It's the one that he wears in Skate-More. The silver one, the shiny. I didn't have the silver one, but he had like a white one with like little like lime green highlights and like a little strip on the heel, like going down. Like that one was kind of simple and thin for the time, so that's why I liked it. The thinner shoes that DVS made while I worked there were the ones that I liked. Oh my god. You're a child flipping through the new CCS catalog with your pen in hand. Your mom just told you to pick out a pair for the new school year. Which are you circling? Of DVS shoes? For school, it was probably like maybe the Milans in like some like colorway that shoe came out in a bunch of colors that were kind of non-traditional. So I probably would have chosen something like that. They kind of look like Adidas knockoffs, you know. So if I'm having to choose DVS, this is a good one. Go to gas station road trip drink and snack combo. If it was 1997, it would be an Arizona iced tea, the green tea, Arizona green tea iced tea, and like beef jerky. Now it would be sparkling water and beef jerky. Basically, I'm only giving up the sweet sugary drink, but I'm sticking with the jerky. I feel like beef jerky is the ultimate road trip snack. Even recently with my wife, we did a road trip and we didn't get any on the way up, and on the way home, I'm like, I gotta get beef jerky. Like we're on a road trip. This is from BurtReynolds.jpg. He says, who are some of your favorite movie directors? You know what? I'm not a big like cinephile guy. I have favorites. I actually really like I like John Hughes. Obviously, I'm referencing 80s teen films. I like Paul Thomas Anderson a lot, but I'm not like a big cinephile guy that's gonna rifle off. Like, I'm not gonna go into like Akira Kurosawa and like French New Wave and stuff. Like, I like those guys, but if I told you those were my favorite directors, I'd be like blowing smoke up your ass, because I do like them, but I haven't like studied their works to the point of being like a massive fan. I just like movies in general, and I like films that give me a feeling. So the director is really part of that, but it's the story. So I think it's more about like the stories than the directors. What's the best way to avoid copyright issues when using music in a skate video? Licensing it. That's the way you avoid the copyright issues, is licensing the music, which is tedious and expensive. Best story from the time you were filming Skate-More? All right, best story from the time I'm filming Skate-More. Mikey Taylor wants to go to Burbank Middle School, which is located in Highland Park. And at the time, it had like these 2 sets of 10 stairs in a row. And the bottom, it was like a 10 stair and another 10 stair. And the bottom 10 stair had like a small hubba on it. And then it also had like a small handrail there, like a 6 stair. And it's the same school where out front, like Neen heel flips over the big like 16 stair rail or something like that. And like Jordan Maxim does like backsmith transfer. Same school. And so at the time, it had become like a hot spot, especially for people trying to do like a line down the 2 sets of 10. And so I went there with Mikey to try to film a line. And I think Berra might have been there that day. But long story short, there's a lot of us in there skating. And Highland Park in 2003 is different than Highland Park in 2019. And so we're all skating in there, and cops come in hot, like 4 or 5 cops come in hot with like hands on holsters, and they're like get over here now, get, like yelling at us from across the yard. They don't want to hear anything. They're just like, they're swearing at us. And they get us all to sit down and line up. And they're kind of taking notice. There's like we're a mixed bag. Like, some of us are in our mid-20s. There's teenagers there. There's like local kids. There's all this different shit going on. And one dude, it's like the dude is like a hard ass, and then there's a female cop she's pretty like hard ass, but you could tell like she's kind of has realized what the situation is, and that we're not like there to like break into the classrooms and do, because they came in, I think, thinking we were like vandalizing, right? And we were just skating. And so he was pissed, and she was a little bit mellower. But I remember, so after he gives us this big long lecture, and obviously we have pulled benches out and shit. We're skating the schoolyard. He's like all like, look at this place. Like, this place is like a total mess or whatever. And we're like, oh, we can like put the benches. You're damn right, you'll put the benches back. And he's like, all right. And there's so many of us that he releases us in like groups to go put the benches back and clean up the schoolyard. Right? There's some like Gatorade bottles, and people had left some trash. And I understand he was frustrated with us, but he's like, all right, go clean up the yard. So a couple of us go and clean up, and then come back. And then he releases like the next group, and there's a lot of us. And it's by the time the third group's about to go, he's lost count of who he has sent and who he hasn't. So there's this moment where he kind of hesitates, and he's like, he goes, instead of like being very specific, like, you got 4, go. He goes, if you haven't gone yet, get up and go over there and clean up. The rest of you start writing the tickets. So I think Mikey, if I remember correctly, Mikey had already gone and cleaned up the benches, but he didn't want to get a ticket. So he stood back up and went pretended to like clean up some shit. And while the dude was writing us tickets, he slipped out of the school and never came back. And so he left and got out of getting a ticket, and the rest of us got it along with these kids and stuff. And I knew right away when he got it, I'm like, what is this dude doing? Like, why is he why is he getting back up? The cop's gonna be like, no, you already went. Like, get back down. But he didn't. So Mikey ended up getting out of there, and I got a ticket. And then when I hopped the fence, I come there with Mikey in his car, so I'm like having no ride, and I'm like, dude, where the fuck's this guy? And then I get like a text, and he's like, meet me down like 3 blocks away or whatever. So I walked down there, and he's like, Mikey was so proud of himself when I got to the car. I'm like, dude, you motherfucker, like, you got out getting a ticket. He's like, I know I did. And I was like, how did you know? Because I would have never made that gamble. I would have been worried that the officer would have been like, you, what the fuck do you think you're doing? And then I would be in more trouble. But he gambled, and he like won, and he was so stoked. Like that was like I remember for a long time he was like telling people the story. So that was one of my favorite Skatemore era filming stories. Fakey Nolly wants to know. He's asking some kind of like tech questions. I'm probably gonna let him down because I'm not like super technical guy. But it says, "What do you use for color correction? Premiere or DaVinci?" I color correct in Premiere, and I do a pretty nominal amount of color correcting. Like, I'm not great at it, and it's just not something that I've spent a ton of time learning. So I usually don't tell people I can color correct stuff. I can like color balance. I can kind of like, if something's super warm or super cool, I can usually kind of bring it back down, or if it's too green. But after that, I'm pretty amateur hour. How much video production work do you do outside of skating? If it was like a percentage thing, I'd say 25% is outside of skating. So 75% is skating. And that fluctuates. Some years, maybe it's only like 15%. And then some years, maybe it's like 30%. But it's mostly skating. What was your favorite project to work on to date? Favorite project was probably Quick with Austin Gillette. That was probably my favorite project. Let's see. Jonas asks, is there a pro skater you have not worked with that you would really like to work with, and who? It's a good question. There are people. Let me see if I can rack my brain. I mean, so work with and film are two different things in my book. Like I've filmed a lot of people, but maybe it was like one afternoon or at a contest, right? Something, but I've never like worked with them on a project. I always wanted to work on a project with Gino. I always wanted to like try to work on something with Gino. And I probably would have liked it. There's a couple other guys kind of from that era that I would have loved to have like been able to like film with more. And then currently there's like, people that I'd be like, oh, Booznitz actually. So somebody I always wanted to work with that I really haven't worked with, I've filmed a few times with on smaller projects, is Dennis Booznitz. So when he got on DVS, it was right at the end of the production for Skatemore, and I was so in the weeds on the edit that I was only filming with a couple guys locally here in LA. And I'd skated with Dennis a few times up in San Francisco with Huff, but we never got to film anything in his video part. So after the video came out, he was one of the guys who was like, oh, I can't wait to like film with Dennis. Like, it's going to be so sick. And then he left for Adidas within like 6 months. And then the whole time at Adidas, I haven't been able to film with him except for like twice, maybe, on smaller projects. So he's one that I've always wanted to film with. He was always the only alternate choice I had for Quick was with Dennis. Like if it was like, who would you do this project with? It was Austin. And if Austin couldn't or wouldn't, it was Dennis. Dennis would have been my only other choice. Should have chose Dennis first? Well, I didn't have any access to Dennis, but I had access to Austin. And Austin was my first choice though, because he was young. I knew him already. And he was like, you could see that he was like right at his like, he was like ready to like hit. And I kind of liked the fact that he, before that he was pretty like underground, I guess. Like he hadn't really blown up too much. He had like 2 Habitat parts, and one of them he was like a young kid in it. He had like kid style kind of still. So that was kind of actually, Dennis was the backup because Dennis was like way more established. I don't know if Dennis would have been as willing to do something as grueling as that project, So yeah, Austin was my first. Dennis was the backup. Although I never spoke to Dennis about it. So Dennis, you were my backup if you would have been willing. There's a Twist has a chart. It's a sandwich chart. That's pretty amazing that it took somebody time to make this. It's like it basically wants to know if you're a sandwich purist or not, or if you can basically consider a Pop-Tart a sandwich. I'm probably closer to like a sandwich purist. Like I picture a sandwich between 2 pieces of bread. Yeah, it's pretty rad. But actually, yeah, a sandwich to me is 2 pieces of bread. If something's wrapped, it's a wrap, right? Like a gyro or like a burrito or like a wrap. Those are wraps. That's why they're called wraps. I'm laughing because the chart's amazing. I wish that the chart's good. Thank you for finding that. Doomstation 55 asks, what's your favorite Colin Kennedy blueprint part? I actually do have one. It's either his, I can't remember if it's Waiting for the World or if it's First Broadcast, but the whatever part that he skates, I think it's Waiting for the World. He skates to a Badly Drawn Boy song, but it's a broadcast remix. that part is it's good. That was a good job, Dan McGee and Colin Kennedy on that part and that whole video. Did Day One drive on sessions when he was living in his car? No. This is before Skate-More all took place before he was. He wasn't really living in his car, but he did drive actually on most of the sessions. He just liked to drive. He's just one of those people. I like to drive too, so it was funny because it would be like I'd be like, I'll drive. He'd be like, no, I'll drive. But Day One liked to drive, so he drove a lot for those. Favorite part in Skate-More? Day One. But I do like. There's other ones that I really love for other reasons, but that's my overall favorite. Tortfeasor asks if you could create a part for any one current era skater in any one city, who would you pick and what city would you put them in? And then it says, what band and song would you have them skate to? I don't know what band or song I would have them skate to. I would probably pick, let's see, there's a couple. Mason Silva is pretty rad. He would be fun to skate with. I don't know what city I'd put him in, but I think Antonio Doral in New York would be fun, dude. He's a special one. Dude, he looks amazing in New York, and he's really consistent and he's spontaneous. So he actually works well for that city because that city, so much of it, you get 2 or 3 tries, and things are weird or hard to hit. That's like a perfect mix. I will say this though, it's like a current era, and I still consider him a current era skater, is Day One. After Skate-More was done, the next big project that I had pitched where it was like, all right, we're gonna rent an apartment for like 2 months in New York, and it was gonna be a Day One street part, all filmed in Manhattan, and we were gonna like rent an apartment and stay there. We even had it planned out where it was like, all right, we'll do like a couple weeks in spring, and then we'll do like a couple weeks in the summer and a couple weeks in fall. And not to do some sort of like changing of the seasons shit, but it was because we both had kids and families, and it was like, rather than try to get it all done in one lump sum, we could go there, and like almost the first mission would serve kind of like a scouting mission as well as filming, and then that way when you come back you have like more ideas, and yeah. So that was always something I wanted to do, was Day One in the Big Apple. So Day One, let's do this, dude. He knows too. I brought it up. It wasn't even just like I brought it up once and then let it die. I would be like, dude, New York part would still be sick. Imagine Day One on like cellar doors and like, dude, it would be fun. There's so many cutty spots in New York that I feel like he would love too. So it says, of all the places you've traveled, where could you see yourself living full time? A couple places. Melbourne, Australia, and Copenhagen, Denmark is another one. And that's probably it. I mean, there's some other cities, like Vancouver's really nice and stuff like that. But like as far as like being foreign or international, it would be Melbourne and Copenhagen. All right, this is Adam Abbas. And he asks, do you think you're on a higher social and evolutionary level than other men due to your full head of hair? And don't you think it's bad that you think that? Dude, actually, I hate how much hair I have. I've always had way too much hair, so if anything, it's like a weird, I don't know, it's like a weird unruly mess. So no, the answer is no. I don't think I'm on a higher plane. During the filming of Skateboard, were there any signs that Jeremy Rogers was going to become the thing that he eventually became? I don't know. Jeremy was always like a interesting kid. Like he was always like doing his own shit, and definitely was in a different world than I was. Our age difference, and then the things that he was into compared to what I was into. So I can't tell because I didn't hang out with him a lot. I didn't know if he was gonna like kind of have pursue like hip hop as a career or whatever like that. It wasn't apparent to me, I think, until like right before it happened. Then I was like, oh, this is like what you're into and not into skating as much. But no, I don't know. Because I didn't film with him that much. But he was a cool kid. He was funny, and he was a funny kid. He was like funny, and like had a lot of energy. So he was actually kind of fun to skate with. Adam Abbas is asking if there's anything you can do to mitigate the age-old problem of like, oh, the spot's so gnarly, it doesn't translate to film though, or you got to be there because the run-up's super gnarly. I don't know that there's a way to like solve that problem without like over explaining the situation, like close-up shot of the rough ground, and like, I don't know. I always tried to, like, if you ran into a spot like that, I would always still just try to highlight like what was the most important part of the trick. Sometimes the trick itself or being in a certain place to capture the trick was way more important than trying to show that aspect. it was like I can try to show that it's like rough or a short run up, but then by doing that, I'm in a weird position for the trick. And I'm not a big fan of like tons of expository coverage, like throw the board down, like I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it. So I usually would try to like weigh my options of like, if he has to ollie up a curb though, I'm going to show that. Like, I would usually never like cut the ollie up the curb right before he does it, because to me that like adds to the trick. That is part of the trick. So it says, if you're a switch inward heel enthusiast, who's got the best? Gino, Keenan, Tony Ferguson, Nick Tucker, or Chima? They've all had some pretty gnarly ones. Nick Tucker had one recently or a couple years ago down like that huge set in New York. That was mind-blowing to me. That was a beautiful one. Keenan has some of my favorites. Ronnie Krieger has a memorable one. He did it like up this gap in Trilogy that I always liked, because it was like up the gap, and I was like, what? And then I always liked Costin's in an Old Form one at Ramona. He was like switch flip up the stage and then switch inward heel down. And that switch inward heel was probably the one that inspired me to like learn it. I just thought it looked cool, like the way it flipped and stuff. So yeah, I just like that trick when it's done well. There's something like really, I don't know. John Ige, I think, did one also, or Ige. He did a nice one in like an old aesthetics ad, I think, or an aesthetics video. He had a proper one. And, like switch versus nollie, switch every time. Like nollie inward heel is cool, but switch inward heel is really cool. Memory screen, boring or fascinating? Memory screen, good. Solid skate video. It was rad. I don't know. I didn't find it boring. I don't know if I found it fascinating either. I was watching that as like a skateboarder back then, and I liked it as a skate video. I like this one. What happened to voiceovers in skate vids? Do you think there's still a place for them? That's a good question, because like a lot of the early skate videos I grew up on, there was like little voiceovers, even if they were like silly sometimes. I kind of liked it. I don't know. It's one of those things that it was like kind of era specific. So when someone brings it back, sometimes it can feel like kitsch, like a little bit like insincere or like ironic. So I think if somebody did it and they did it in a sincere way and it wasn't ironic, I think, yeah, it could work. But if you were just kind of like emulating what you'd heard, in the earlier videos to try to be like, look, it's like a throwback. I don't know. I don't know if that would be cool or not. Straight asks, do you remember the moment Mike Taylor added the Y? Yeah, it was, we were at Olive Garden, and, no, I'm kidding, dude, I don't know, I'm sure he was Mikey before he was Mike. I don't know how, or why he went in, or why he did it. I don't know. I actually don't know when that happened. It says, this is a funny one. Skate-More has a lot of financially successful dudes. Besides Jay Casanova, who would you say has got it best? Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. They're all like successful in their own right. Like Daewon, Dennis, but then you got Dill with FA, and like, I don't know. So I don't know. I say let's see, who's got it best? I'm trying to think. Dennis maybe, actually, because he has like a house in the city in SF, and then he has a house in like, not even the suburbs, like in the rural areas. But Dennis has it pretty good because he kind of has like this compound that he's created for himself where he builds his own DIY stuff or whatever. That's and then still has a house in the city, which is cool. So, but Daewon's got it good. I don't know. I'm like trying to think. All those guys, they did do pretty good for themselves. I don't know. Jerron and Huff, dude, yeah, there are a lot of entrepreneurs on that team. Tori, yeah. Even Carrie, though. Carrie's got like a rad, massive family. So he's winning in other ways. He's got like, I feel like, I don't know. That's a subjective. Yeah, that's right, Mikey Taylor. This is a good question from Straight. That was a good question. This is like, a lot of skaters have said the best of times, money-wise, were when skater-owned companies were on top. Did that translate over to the filmers as well? I don't know if there was like a massive difference. I mean, there was like the early days when filmers weren't really making anything. They were just getting like product, or they would get like a pretty measly check. But the fact that job even existed, most of them were just doing it because you're hanging out with your friends, you're getting free stuff, and you're getting enough money to like just cover your expenses. And then there was like kind of a moment where it kind of changed, like kind of right when I was getting into the industry. Then it started because it was more of like a viable job, I guess. Low Calcium. They're asking, what's your favorite Simpsons episode and why? Great question. Itchy and Scratchy Land. and the why is because the whole episode. 2 is favorite female skateboarder. There's 2 of them. It's Lisa Whitaker, who owns Meow, who I grew up skating with. She's rad and was skating when there were almost no other girls skating, and she did a lot for our group of friends. She drove us around when we didn't have cars. She filmed us. She rules, and she rips. And then Alyssa Seymour, when Welcome to Hell came out and Alyssa's part came on, dude, instant fan for life. Hardest trick in your personal opinion in skateboard? That's a good question. It might be, dude, there's a lot of hard questions, or there's a lot of hard tricks in there. So I'll just choose one from Day One's part that probably doesn't get recognized as one of the hardest tricks, but he does this ollie onto like this almost vertical wall and like 360 flips to fakie. It's like this super narrow white concrete thing. That is impossible. It's like he basically ollies into like a dead stop, 360 flip somehow, lands and comes down. Like, that was crazy. That was crazy, and that actually speaks to one of those questions earlier. I can't remember who asked it, but like, how, like to showcase a spot and make it look as hard as it is, like there was just no way. But he does a kickflip fakie on it, and we gave that footage to a different video. But the heel flip fakie is at a similar style spot, nowhere near as steep, and that one has like bushes and stuff in the background. This is at this like bank in El Segundo, like a money bank, and it's crazy. It's crazy to do that. And that was one of those ones where like we knew, I'm like, no one's ever, they'll be able to tell it was hard, but if you go there, it's laughable. You're like, you just ollie, it's like a Spider-Man, like ollie, stuck, 360 flip. Does Dennis Busenitz try tricks only a few times and he's over it, or will he try and get a trick for like 3 hours straight? Nah, I mean, I haven't filmed with Dennis a ton, but the few times I have filmed with him, he's pretty much like, let's get this quickly because I don't want to keep trying the same things over and over. He doesn't skate like that. He's not the dude that like, even when he's just warming up, it's not like he's like, oh, we're going to film this line. Let me try that line a bunch. He just warms up and tries a bunch of different shit. And then he's like, all right, I'm ready. It's pretty rad. Like he's actually enjoyable to watch skate for that reason, that he's not, it's not this like super routine regimented thing. This is from Cuban Links. Have you ever fanned out when meeting a skater? Nah. Dude, I grew up in an era where you had to keep that stuff completely bottled up. So internally, I'm sure I fanned out, but never let them know. Like I never was like, dude, that was just unacceptable. I would have been immediately like blacklisted. They're like, get this kook out of here. What's a filming cliche that you can't stand? I am not a fan of the unnecessary pan away from people, right? When people are filming long lens and like someone does the trick, why pan? Where are you going? You know, like, because the crazy thing is too, especially with people wanting to show more and more footage now it feels extra weird to me because they'll film someone do the trick, they'll do the trick and it's like a gnarly trick. So there's like a reaction afterward from somebody, but they'll do that pan away thing and then they have to come back to like film them celebrating and reacting. I'm like, just stay on them. Like, so I've never been a fan of the pan thing, even like to like the feet and stuff. I've done it a few times in my filming lifetime, but that was never like, I never felt that instinct to be like, they made it, go somewhere else. I don't know when that became popular or why, but yeah, sometimes I would just rather see it stay on the person or just do a straight cut out of the scene. You can miss something and it just feels like unmotivated. Like, you know, what is the reason for the pan? Like, normally you're doing something because like, even if you're panning from something, right? Like if you're starting on like the top of the building, you're coming down, it's because you're trying to show like the scale or the location. This stuff just feels like, where are you going? Like what? All right, these questions are from Cliff. So they're a little bit like inside job because I met James when I was like 14 or 15 and we skated a lot in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. And occasionally still like run into Cliff on trips, which is nice. It's always nice to like be on a trip and see someone that you grew up with on like the other side of the world or something. It says, what was the first 4-in-1 you actually had footage in? The first 4-in-1 was issue 28. That was the first time that I had footage in an issue. And it was footage. It was a lot of footage. I had footage in like the Chaos. I had footage in my buddy Evan Shufflebind's Wheels of Fortune. I had footage in Gideon Choi's Rookies. I had none. And then in one issue I had credits footage. I felt like I'd won the lottery. I was like, holy shit. Issue 28 was a big one. Who's your favorite skate videographer of all time? It's probably, there's 2 of them. That's a tough one. It's probably Aaron Meza, Sock, and probably Tim Dowling, for all different reasons. I think Tim was like the most like technically proficient of those guys. Like early on, his footage always looked like sharp and clear, and his fisheye was proper. I loved like he filmed most of Mouse, and his shit looked amazing. And then Sock was a little bit earlier, and he was filming, he like 20 shot and all that stuff. And he just filmed great skateboarding, and he filmed it really well. Like there's so much stuff burned in my memory from him. And then Meza was like the first dude, I think, when he did like the FTC video, the second one especially, there was like an overall like vibe and tone to it, like musically and everything. It felt super cohesive. And so he kind of had the total package. So those are the guys that like early on really like they influenced me and how I thought like a skate video could or should look. There was other guys too, but those were like the three that they seemed to consistently make things that I was like interested in and liked. It says, who used to film you out of the crew before you made it to the big time? Everybody. That was the crew logic. So Evan and Johnny. I don't think James ever filmed me. I think James was already like he was like sponsored, so he like, I wasn't gonna ask him to film. And I don't think maybe Danny filmed me like once or twice, but he was probably like talking shit between tries. Lisa Whitaker, I'll go back to that. Lisa definitely filmed me, and Anthony Acosta definitely filmed me. But that was a very brief window. I stopped asking them to film me. When did you know you wanted to be a skateboard videographer? My senior year, when I kept injuring myself and I wanted to still go out on the skate missions. That was when I decided to finally like start taking it a little more serious. Just to keep it going, to be out on the missions even with like a hurt foot, to have like a reason to be there. Easiest and hardest person to film and why? There's like people that are easy in different ways. There was like, all right, so like Danny Garcia was easy in the sense that when we got a little bit older, he became really, like he was very conscious of his time and energy. So he wouldn't do the thing where he'd be like, where do you want to go to skate today? I'm like, I don't know. He'd be like, oh, let's just go cruise and like figure something out. He didn't do that. He would be like, hey, I've been trying like nollie heel front nose all week at this ledge by my house. I think I want to do it down like this rail. Like he almost like, because this is pre like skate park and TF stuff, like where we didn't have access to that. But he was like very like dialed in. He kind of knew what he wanted to do. And so when I would go film, because he's saying who was the easiest to film, he was kind of easy in that regard. But on the flip side, he had put a lot of pressure on himself. So if he didn't do things and didn't do them quickly, he would get pissed. And so trying to keep him like focused and like not letting him get too pissed off and be over it was like a definite, like a balancing act of like, because he also wasn't the dude though that really loved encouragement. He wasn't, I couldn't just be like, yeah, Danny, like next try, you got it, dude. He would that would like irk him more and he'd be like, I'm over this. So you had to be this like fine line of like just a little bit of encouragement, be like, and whatever. Just enough, but couldn't go too far. Hardest person to film? I mean, it wouldn't be like the people were hard to film. It would be like the circumstances, or they'd be like non-responsive. Like, they just blow you off and you're just like, fuck, dude, like we need to film. Like, trying to that. Dylan was pretty good at that. I would like hear he was because he lived in New York at the time, and I'd hear he'd be out here in LA. Like someone would be like, oh, I saw Dylan. I'm like, oh, you saw Dylan? He's in town. Then he'd be like, hit him up, like Jason, what's up? Like, let's meet up this week or whatever. And then he'd just either nothing, or he'd be like, cool, like, yeah, come. And he didn't have a car because he never had a license. So you'd have to pick him up. So you would be like, all right, yeah, I'll come get you or whatever. And then, like, how's Tuesday? And then just like nothing. Or he would say, yeah, Tuesday's good. And then Tuesday would come around and be like, oh, hey, dude, I'm not going to go or whatever. He was good at like kind of evading. Yeah. And I found out at that point, he was really didn't like filming in Southern California. He was kind of over it. He's like really wanted to film in New York. And that's why most of his skateboard part is like Miami and New York. He just like, I don't want to film in LA. But he didn't really let me know that for a while. And I'm like, oh, dude, well, I would have come out to New York. But this is from Point and Click. Having a fairly common last name, how annoying is it when people ask, are you related to Corey, Terry, JFK? More people ask me if I'm related to JFK than any of the skaters. And usually, like, it'll be like some weird thing where I'm like checking in for something, when they're like, oh, Mr. Kennedy, your room or whatever. And I'll be checking into like a Holiday Inn and they'll be like, any relation? And I like want to be like, dude, I wouldn't be staying at the fucking Holiday Inn if I was part of the Kennedys. Like, it's one of those weird moments where I'm like, no relation. Like, I just happened to choose the Hampton Inn. This is from RCB3. And it says, what's your favorite trick or clip you've ever filmed? Favorite trick or clip I've ever filmed is Keenan's switch frontside shove it heel flip over the rail off of Wilshire. Not the switchback heel, but I filmed that one too. And I like that one, but it was so dark I don't really like how I got to film it. But the switch shove it heel is like, for me, he did it as textbook as you're ever going to do that trick at a rad spot. Just everything worked out. I remember just feeling like pretty, like, damn, like just got a good one. So that's probably my favorite. This is from Francis Xavier. Are you a frontside or backside nose slide guy? Backside nose slide for sure. And then it says, whose nose slide do you like the best? There's a couple obvious. Rob Welsh has a great nose slide. Drake Jones has an amazing nose slide. And then the person that I kind of learned how to like nose slide pop out from and kind of emulated was Jerry Fowler. I was skating with him a bunch, and Jerry's got great like board control and could kind of pop out of everything. All of his tricks are like ding, ding, like he's like weird like bunny rabbit almost. And he would do these like kind of short, he wouldn't like nose slide, sit in it and then pop. I've never been a fan of the long nose slide where it's like, here it comes. Like I like when it's kind of like one motion almost and it looks sick. Jerry was doing those, I remember at like Hickory School, and I was like, what? Like, how do you do that? So I definitely was inspired by his nose slides. And then obviously Rob Welsh's and Drake's, but Jerry's I got to witness personally, whereas those dudes were in a video. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to do that. So backside nose slides, Jerry Fowler. Was Day One a Donut Fiend? Was he at Donut Fiend levels during the Skate-More filming? Have you ever seen him eat a dozen to himself? Day One was not a donut fiend during Skate-More. And in fact, we didn't eat that many donuts at all. The thing we ate most frequently during the filming of Skate-More was Indian food. We would eat a lot of Indian food for like lunch or dinner, and we have very fond memories of like trying out new Indian restaurants. We were on like an Indian kick for a long time, but most of the time we would eat it at the end of the day because as anybody who's ever eaten Indian food, that's definitely rolling the dice if you're going to do it for lunch, especially if you're out skating. So they were usually like celebratory or you know, nursing our wounds. We'd eat Indian. Any stuff you've put out that you'd wish you could refilm or get a second angle of? Yeah, I don't know what specifically it would be, but I'm sure if we went through video projects, I'd be like, yeah, I wish I could have done that again or filmed it differently. But it is what it is. This is from Stanley Spadowski. Favorite 80s teen movie? Ooh, probably like for like the just overall campiness and stuff, Lost Boys. Gotta go with Lost Boys. And then I wouldn't call it a teen movie, but it kind of is a teen movie. If we're talking about like best 80s kind of movie with like aimed at young people, Stand By Me is the fucking jam. So that is like an amazing film. But if we're talking like teen 80s gloss, kind of all of the whole package, then I gotta go with like Lost Boys. Had a little bit of everything. Pretty cheesy, but I love it. Best part in Mouse? Come on. This guy. Best part in Snuff? Gino. This is Steven's lawyer. It says, did anybody involved with Skate-More try to have an intervention for Berra and his fake spots? Was anyone from the team bummed on his simulated street footage? Well, no one tried to have an intervention. Like, he was definitely, that was something that he wanted to do, and he was intent on doing it. I think people were, I would say probably a couple team riders were like confused and bummed on it. I mean, these were all like dudes that were doing their own thing. No one was sitting around like, you know, gonna sit there and be like Berra's doing this. They were kind of just like, why is Berra doing that? I'm gonna go do this. It was definitely like odd at the time. I remember I felt like kind of weird. Like I felt like, oh, I don't know if I want to film this. And I remember talking to Steve and being like, hey, like I have like a regular, like a spot that's close to this. Like the thing that you want to skate, I have one similar. But some of the stuff that he wanted to make and do, I couldn't find like a street replica for. So I couldn't say like, dude, don't do it here. Come do it here. So, I mean, at that time I was like kind of a purist still about like what a skate video part should be and stuff. And so I was conflicted. I remember like filming some of those things. Like I was kind of I was like, oh, if we, like I really wanted to find a real spot for him to do them at. But at the end of the day, I only filmed a few of the things. I remember just being like, whatever, like this is his part. This is what he wants to do. And ironically enough, like, dude, anything goes now. People film like fucking shit in skate parks and like, move shit around all they want. The only difference was he put a crazy amount of time into it, which I remember that being the trippy part. People being like, wait, what? He like painted the sign to look like the Allstate, that was the part that I think we all were tripping on. This is from Snowman 600. How do you feel about Guy bringing back the goatee? Kind of really hyped, actually, that he's bringing back the goatee. And then tell us a Tim Gavin story. I can't share any Tim Gavin stories. Let me say this. I don't have a Tim Gavin story, but I love Tim. I've never worked for somebody that made me laugh as much as that guy. And he was like getting Tim on a trip. Like every now and then he'd join us on a trip. And it was like a double-edged sword because one, you knew you were going to have a lot of fun and you're going to laugh your ass off and you're going to get into situations that were hilarious. And then two, you knew there was the potential that he was going to derail the productivity of the filming mission because he was there. So it was a curse and a blessing, but I love working with that dude. Tim's rad. This is from Danny D. Having filmed so much with a skater like Daewon, who is the perfect balance between insane technical ability and an eye for a spot, what moment stands out as a what the fuck, this guy is on a different level than everyone else? The tail slide on the waterfall was a perfect example of that. When he told me, we'd been to that spot a few times. Like he filmed like an inward heel flip manual, like over the river gap, and then he goes in. That's the same spot. And we'd been there to skate just the river gap by itself. And he was the one I remember when he told me he wanted to tail slide the waterfall. And I remember thinking like, how are you going to do that? And for some reason I was thinking he was going to like come up the bank where it was dry and start the tail slide there and then go into the water and come out. So when we got there and he was like, no, I'm going to like push into the waterfall. I remember thinking this guy's on another level because I tried to walk up that just to see like how it felt. It was so slippery and mossy. Like you couldn't even keep your balance. And I remember thinking, like, there's no way you're going to be able to do this on urethane wheels. Like if I can't, just as a guy walking and trying to keep my balance, do it, how are you going to do it? And then, oh, hell yeah. Yeah, just slipped. I mean, I put my hands down. I didn't let myself get all soaked. But I remember there's a lot, like from that footage, the raw footage, I think there's a lot of like laughing in disbelief the whole time. Like I'm like dying. Like every time he get close, I'm like, holy shit. Like, and when he makes it, I remember like laughing, like, couldn't believe that. Yeah, that was a moment. Because other people have done things. So here's one of the things. Like I remember after the fact, people they would do things in like waterfalls, but it was always like a straight up and straight down maneuver. Which, not taking away from it, that's still really hard and I'm sure slippery and frustrating. But the fact that Daewon's coming up at like a 45-degree angle through like the moss, tail sliding and then coming down, that's like some whole other shit. So that's why you've never like. Has there ever been a repeat of like, oh yeah, this other dude did like back tail on the waterfall? That was a moment that I think exemplifies that aspect of Daewon. The Unknown Soldier, just because it's a little bit different, it says, if you could film a part with any skater that you haven't before, who would you pick and how would their part feel? I would probably pick who's like, it would be fun to do a part with like Guy or Gino or Buznitz or Westgate would be a fun one too. And then it says, how would their part feel? And my goal would be their part would feel like none of their other parts. I couldn't tell you how it would feel, but I would definitely be a conscious decision to be like, hey, let's make something that doesn't feel like it could have been a part you've ever had. This is from Victor Doom. It says, how long were the filming missions with Daewon due to the oddity of his spots? Sometimes because they were so weird and sketchy, the tricks would happen fast because he didn't want to like fuck around, like on the roofs and stuff like that. And then other times it would take a while. But most of the tricks I can say that we filmed together in Skatemore, it was usually one session, but maybe the previous time we went there, we just skated it and didn't film. That would happen a lot. Like we would find something and rather than be like, all right, let's film on it the first time we're there, we would session it, get a feel for it. Because we would drive by it like at the end of the day after we'd already filmed somewhere. I was like, oh, let's go check out this other thing I want to try. We'd skate it, get a feeling, be like, oh, and then he would start thinking like, I want to try this, and then we'd go back. And most of the time we'd get something that one day. I mean, we might be there for like 3 hours or something, but Daewon was like pretty good about planning it, and then also like just like if we were going to do it, he's going to get it that day. He didn't want to like come back. This is from Plan Man. It said, what'd you have for lunch today? I haven't eaten lunch yet. I had a nectarine, and then I tried to make some avocado with like bread, like toast and tomatoes and stuff like that. But the avocado was one of those weird ones where everything looks perfect. It's not too soft or anything like that. I cut it open and it rotted from the inside out. Like worst ones because everything looks legit and it feels good and like, oh, this is gonna be a delicious one. And then it's like a disaster. Thoughts on iDabble from someone who was involved with 4-in-1? That's a funny question. When I saw those guys posting the clips online, like we're gonna do this like kind of like 4-in-1 style thing. I think because I ended up working at 4-in-1, my nostalgia for 4-in-1 isn't there. Like for me, skate nostalgia is like videos before I was involved in the industry. Whereas I think the guys making it like they were that kind of was they're a little bit younger than me, so their 4-in-1 I think played a more prominent role in their world than it did in mine. And it was big in my world, but team videos were still kind of my favorite thing. So I think I like the fact that they're doing that, but it definitely, I'm not like super nostalgic for a video format like a 4-in-1. But I've seen a couple of things they've done and it's rad. And I love that they're kind of having a host and like doing it like how Lance did and stuff. So I do get that, and I do get the desire to recreate that because I am kind of like big on nostalgia. So I get that for them. That's like I think more for their age. Any good Antonio Durao stories? I'm trying to think. I don't have any good ones that haven't been in those numbers edits. Yeah, he's in, and in fact, in the second numbers piece, that's the one where he does like the huge switch front heel over the rail, and that was the one where he does that line on those like that. Okay, that's a story. Yeah, those two big black ledges that are in downtown LA that he skates. He does like a nose slide to fakie and then a switch front. Or no, he does switch front nose, half cab flip, and then nose slide fakie, and then manual kickflip. Here's my Antonio story. Guy had been skating with Antonio in downtown like that week, like before we started filming that thing. And he was like telling me, Guy was going, oh, Antonio was skating these like black ledges. And he was trying to describe them to me. And I was like, black ledges, like downtown. And everything he was describing, I'm like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. Because those aren't ledges. Like, I would have never categorized those as ledges. And then when we showed up to him, Guy was like, oh, these are the things I was telling you about. I'm like, oh, dude. I'm like, yeah, I know these. I would have never called these a ledge. And then I was like, what were you trying on Antonio? Because he was telling me that Antonio was skating them. And I'm like, looking at him and thinking, what the hell is this dude even, like, what can he get up on these? And then within a few tries, he was leveling out that switch front nose. And I was, and I was like, holy shit. I'm like, you want to try to get that? And then he was like, well, I kind of want to try to get a line. So every time I was like, what? That was a crazy one. That he like, dude, that was mind blowing. Go to those things. If anybody goes to downtown LA, go to those. Those are not ledges to anybody. Those are walls. Those are crazy. So that was my Antonio story, because I guess he was skating it. Well, the thing, I guess, to finish up that story is he was skating it for fun with Guy. They didn't have a filmer with them. They were just sessioning it. So I'm like, that's what kind of skater he is. He's just like, yeah, I'll just skate these walls. This is from Turtle Boy. Did you expect that Dennis Busenitz will become what he is now the first time you saw him skate? No. The first time I saw Dennis skate was like just in a video from this like shop video from like Kansas City or something. This guy Kevin Barnett, who I think he was in their video. He was from Kansas City, and he had sent like a video, like a local video to 4-in-1. And when he started working for us, like he showed us footage of Dennis, and it was right when Dennis was getting on reel. So he was like, oh, I filmed with this kid, like he's gnarly. He knew how gnarly he was, but like when I saw the footage of him, he looked good, but I couldn't see it. This is like 1999 or 2000 or something like that. It's a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, he's good. But then, yeah, I think when I first saw like some footage of his on reel, that there was something special there. And then when he had that part, it was it was Roll Forever. That Roll Forever part came out. And it's funny because before that, he was stuck in like DVS flow purgatory. And I had already skated with him, and like Huff and the team manager, this guy Gabe, everyone was vouching for him. Like, dude, put this kid on. Like, he rips. Like, put him fully on the team. And the powers that be were like, I don't know about this kid or whatever. That part comes out. I swear to God, like the next day they were like, oh yeah, I guess we're putting on the team. Or like, we're going to try to put on the team. It was like, all it took was that part. And then he suddenly was, everybody wanted him on the team. Were you filming Dill during the Skatemore era? How was it to work with him? Yeah, I filmed with Jason during Skatemore. So all of his LA stuff is stuff that I filmed. So like his Ender, like the blunt slide to Susky grind. And I didn't film any of the New York stuff. So all the New York stuff is Strobeck, and the Miami stuff is Strobeck. And then I filmed all of the LA stuff, which is not that much. There's like a couple. There's like a handful, like maybe like 8 or 9 things or something. But he didn't come out to LA that much during that filming process, so it was hard to film with him. But we got some stuff, and he was fun to film with. Like he has good trick selection and good spot selection, so he was fun to film with because he would want to go to things or do things that were kind of unusual, which I have always liked. I wasn't very excited about trying to do things that are standard. So Turtle Boy also asks, were skaters complaining about the quality of DVS shoes? No. At that time, the DVS was like king. They were killing it, and they made some decent shoes. Some of the models were pretty good. They made a bunch of terrible models, but the skaters didn't skate those. Those were like the big puffy motocross ones that, nobody was getting those in their packages. But I think, like any other skater with any other shoe, there's always going to be something where they'll complain, but I don't remember anybody specifically being like, oh, these shoes suck. If only I rode for DC or something. Thank you guys for submitting your questions. There were some rad ones in there. I wish I had better answers for some of them, but I'm not good on my toes. But there are good stories out there that I still haven't told. So yeah, hopefully that answered your guys' questions. Thanks.